The dog would not budge from that manhole. Officers tried everything until one opened the cover. What they found beneath stopped everyone cold. Could this be linked to the missing teen from last week? This one's wild. Before we roll into it, drop your favorite dog's name in the comments and hit that subscribe button. Tuesday mornings in Glendale, New Jersey rarely brought anything unexpected. The streets usually stirred with sleepy regularity. Delivery vans backing into alleys, coffee shops opening their doors, and school buses pausing at corners still slick from overnight dew. At precisely 7:15 a.m., Officer Brian Talcott pulled his patrol SUV beside the corner of Henderson and 8th Avenue for his routine security check. His K9 partner Diesel sat in the rear compartment, already perked up, amber eyes alert as ever. A 6-year-old German Shepherd with 2 commendations and a spotless alert record, Diesel was trained to pick up on everything from narcotics to human scent. What Brian loved most about Diesel, though, was not just his skill. It was his quiet intensity. The dog seemed to see things before others even noticed. But this morning, Diesel was restless. Brian had noticed it back at the station. The dog paced before loading into the vehicle, circled twice before lying down, and kept sniffing the air near the equipment locker. At the time, Brian chalked it up to leftover scent from yesterday's narcotic sweep. Now, as the SUV crawled down 8th, Diesel began to growl low, deep from his chest. The patrol SUV came to a stop outside the old Glendale Public Library, now boarded up for renovations. The building had been empty for 6 months, but city workers were due later this week to begin repairs. Diesel's head shot forward against the gate. His ears were stiff. Then he barked. Once, then again, each bark sharper than the last. Brian narrowed his eyes. There was nothing visibly wrong. The sidewalk was clear, the side doors secured, and no pedestrians were nearby. But Diesel's nose was locked on something. Not the building, not the alley, the manhole. Just 6 feet from the patrol car sat a rusted iron cover, the city logo barely visible on its surface. Diesel lunged forward against the barrier and barked again, this time louder. He pawed at the door with urgency. Brian released the latch and stepped out, circling toward the rear. As soon as he opened the back, Diesel launched out and bounded toward the manhole cover, nose to the ground, tail stiff and unmoving. He barked, paced in a tight circle, then stopped directly over it, front paws pressed, sniffing like he had locked onto something undeniable. Brian stepped closer, kneeling beside the cover. It looked like every other manhole in the city, aged, slightly loose on one side, but otherwise unremarkable. Diesel suddenly growled. Not a warning growl, it was his alert growl, the kind he gave when he found something that should not be there. Brian called it in. At first, it was a simple welfare check, standard protocol for a K9 alert. But the moment backup arrived, the situation began to shift. 2 other officers joined him at the scene. One of them, Officer Renee Callister, had worked K9 units before transferring to Glendale Precinct last year. She knew the signs. "Something's under there," she muttered, watching Diesel. Brian nodded. He's locked on it, like he can smell something moving. They called for a city maintenance crew to bring a lift wrench and open the cover. 10 minutes later, the hatch groaned open with a wet metallic sound. Diesel backed away slightly but kept barking, now sharper, more frantic. The hole revealed a narrow shaft lined with brick and a metal ladder. A heavy stink wafted up, stale water, rust, and something else. Not sewage, something closer to decay. One of the utility workers volunteered to go down, but Brian stopped him. "If Diesel's reacting like this, I want a camera first." A portable inspection drone was lowered in. Its light scanned the narrow tunnel. The team watched on a tablet screen as the camera crawled forward, illuminating the interior. It took less than 40 seconds before they froze the feed. At approximately 20 feet down off a small offshoot tunnel, the camera panned past what looked like a bundle of cloth. But it was not just cloth, it was a bag, military style, olive drab, tied with a red string, and beside it on the tunnel floor, fresh boot prints. Brian's blood ran cold. "Someone's been down there recently," Callister muttered. Brian looked down at Diesel, who was still pacing beside the opening, head angled toward the tunnel like he was following a scent trail only he could understand. The area was sealed, police tape was drawn, the bomb squad and hazmat were called in. When they retrieved the bag, it was sealed tightly in plastic. But Diesel barked again as soon as it was lifted into the open. That was his final signal. Something inside was not supposed to be there. Inside the bag were photos, dozens of them, rolled tightly and wrapped in waterproof casing. They were surveillance images, some grainy, some clear, of buildings around Glendale. Some showed street intersections. Some showed people. Most chilling of all, several of the photographs were of the police station itself. Taken from across the street, one of them was dated just 2 days prior. More officers arrived as the situation evolved from a routine sweep into something far more complex. The department's intelligence division was brought in. The FBI was alerted. A small GPS tracker had been sewn into the lining of the bag. Dead battery, no logs. Then under the photos, another item was found. A notebook. The writing inside was coded, handwritten in sharp slashes, each entry dated, each one referencing drops and intersections. One entry read, 8th and Henderson. Observe until 9:15. Mark vehicle if uniform enters. Brian stood motionless. That was this very corner and this very vehicle. The manhole had not just been a hiding place, it was a waypoint. Part of a larger map, one they had not yet understood. But Diesel had understood something no one had expected, something no one else could have found. The manhole was just the beginning, and someone had planned for it to stay hidden. Until the dog started barking, the Glendale police station didn't sleep that night. Word of what Diesel uncovered had spread quickly, but the details remained locked behind high-security walls. The surveillance photos, the coded notebook, and the hidden military-style bag were all handed over to the Joint Task Force by 5 p.m., and by 6:30 a mobile command center had been parked 2 blocks from the manhole. But for Officer Brian Talcott and Diesel, it didn't feel like they had solved anything. It felt like they had just torn the corner off something much bigger. The photos showed more than random intersections. When laid out chronologically, they revealed a pattern, certain routes, people, and movements tracked for weeks. Many of the images focused on officers, delivery trucks, and utility workers. But one detail stood out. A figure appeared multiple times, always from the back, always wearing a beige jacket and carrying a black case. Same build, same walk. In one photo, the figure stood directly across from the Glendale precinct on a rainy Tuesday just 3 days before the manhole discovery. He was holding something that looked like a remote in his hand. Brian felt it in his gut. Someone had been watching them, and that bag sealed in the tunnel directly across from an old boarded-up building was not just surveillance. It was a signal, a waypoint, a hidden mark for someone else to retrieve. But Diesel had found it first. That night, Brian sat with Diesel in the station kennel as the dog quietly chewed at the corner of his blanket, still on edge. Brian reviewed the photos again and again, circling dates, sketching a crude map. He was trying to track the footprints beneath the city. By morning, a special unit had been called in to scan the underground system beneath Glendale. Most of it was storm drainage and maintenance shafts, but a few led into old, undocumented service tunnels, ones that had not been used since the 1960s. The map from the notebook had symbols next to streets that didn't make sense at first, until one of the techs ran them through a coordinate overlay against the city's civil engineering archives. And something strange happened. One of the notations matched a disused shaft beneath an old bakery on Lawson Street. The bakery had closed years ago. Now it was an empty lot awaiting redevelopment. Brian didn't wait for orders. He requested a 2-man team and brought Diesel. The bakery ruins were boarded up, but the metal grate behind the building had been disturbed. Diesel moved fast, too fast. His nose locked on the ground, barking sharply once, then pacing toward the alley. Brian forced open the back panel and found a rusted hatch. Underneath, a ladder leading down into the dark. Diesel didn't hesitate. He barked, once, loud, then waited. Brian radioed it an entry to a restricted zone, possible contraband or criminal trace. Then he descended. The tunnel was cold and damp. Diesel's nails clicked on the concrete as they moved, every sense focused. At the 30-foot mark they found it, a crude shelter, cans, wires, a battery-powered light still working, and taped to the wall more photos. One showed the Glendale courthouse. Another was marked with an X over the corner of Polk and Meyer Street, where the mayor's motorcade would pass that Saturday during the Founders Parade. This wasn't just surveillance anymore, it was planning. Back at the precinct, security footage was pulled from public and private buildings surrounding 8th and Henderson. A feed from a pawn shop across the street gave them the clearest image yet. The man in the beige jacket, medium build, gloves, hat pulled low, sunglasses. At exactly 9:12 a.m., he stopped across the street from the manhole. He bent down to tie his shoe, and when he stood up, he was no longer holding the black case. 2 minutes later, he was gone. But the case, it wasn't there. That meant only one thing. He had passed it off. But to who? The footage showed several pedestrians walking nearby, a man on a bike, a woman with a stroller, a teenager on his phone. But one detail froze Brian's blood. Diesel had been looking not at the hole, but past it, to a manhole down the block. They found it 6 blocks away. Same model, same rust. But this one had scratch marks along its lip, fresh, recent. Diesel barked again. Beneath it was another tunnel and another cache. This one contained a wrapped metal cylinder. Inside, more SD cards, encrypted, unreadable without the proper interface. But the label was clear, Phase 2, relocate 24-hour window. By that point, federal officials were watching everything. Every tunnel map was compared, every potential route flagged, but only Diesel could track the unseen. That night, as the rain fell over Glendale, Diesel stood beside Brian outside the precinct. He didn't bark. He just stared across the street toward a parked SUV. 2 men sat inside the vehicle, no plates, tinted windows. Brian moved slowly, hand on holster. The SUV started, headlights flared, but before it could pull off, Diesel lunged forward and barked so loud it stopped the entire street. Backup arrived in under 60 seconds. The men were pulled from the vehicle, fake IDs, inside the trunk, another bag, and this one, wired. It wasn't armed, not yet. But the timer inside, deactivated but once live, was programmed to start at 10 a.m. Saturday morning, exactly when the mayor's parade was set to begin. And the device, not explosive, signal-based, a transmission tool designed to activate something elsewhere. The debrief room at Glendale Police HQ was silent except for the buzz of a ceiling fan and the soft hiss of coffee brewing in the corner. Maps were pinned to every board. Satellite images covered tables. Red marker lines stretched across intersections, storm grates, and underground tunnel entrances, an entire hidden network beneath their feet. But one name kept surfacing, or rather, one code name, Terminal Blue. The phrase had first appeared on the SD card found in the manhole tunnel, then again in the notebook scribbled with ciphered numbers, and now burned into the firmware of the signal device seized from the black SUV. Every thread pointed back to this phrase. Brian stared at it circled in red on the wall. Diesel sat beside him, ears twitching, head resting on his paws, calm but never fully relaxed. There was more, something deeper. Federal techs spent the next 18 hours breaking the encryption on the SD cards. What they found was not just audio files, but live GPS tracking data, timestamps paired with moving objects, dozens of them. Each one tagged with phrases like, Terminal Blue Phase 1 active, Asset C transferred via Drain N9, Observer 4 in place. Await Phase 2. It was not just surveillance, it was coordination. Across the country? Across Glendale? No, just the city, all within a 10-mile radius of the tunnels. It was a localized operation, precise, intentional. Brian stepped out into the hallway, away from the jargon and tech. He needed clarity. That's when he saw Diesel stiffen again. The dog's eyes locked on a janitor rolling a mop cart down the rear hallway. Something in his posture or scent triggered the dog instantly. A bark, low, sharp. Brian stepped between them and ordered the man to halt. The janitor paused. His hands trembled just enough to be noticed. Brian asked for ID. The man produced a laminated badge, clean, crisp, too new. Brian radioed it in. No employee by that name. When they searched his cart, they found another black case beneath the cleaning supplies. Just 3 more SD cards and a small headset. One line was printed inside the case in plain block font. If this is found, Phase 2 has failed, proceed to red exit. Every tip traced back to one building, abandoned on city records, condemned in permits, and hidden behind a wall of paperwork. A warehouse near the water district. It sat quiet, unnoticed, but had been in use. Heat signatures were detected at odd hours. Trucks rolled in and out with temporary plates, and the loading docks all aligned with Glendale's old sewer system. By the time the tactical unit arrived, it was nearly 3 a.m. Brian insisted on bringing Diesel. The dog had been right every time. They were not taking chances now. The warehouse was entered quietly, no guards, no alarms. But inside, dozens of screens, maps, listening equipment, drones. It was an intelligence hub built beneath the city. And one hallway led to a reinforced room sealed, no external locks. Diesel barked once, then again, then sat. That was the signal. Inside that room, they found a single chair, a table, and a monitor looping the words, Phase 3, ready, awaiting signal. When the feds examined the data collected, something emerged that none of them had seen coming. The operation had not just been watching Glendale. They had been monitoring the emergency response patterns, ambulance routes, police dispatch timing, fire engine delays. They were testing how quickly and where the city could react. This was not meant to explode. It was meant to fail safely, to map weaknesses, timings, reactions. It was a test run. And if Diesel hadn't barked at that manhole, if that first case had stayed hidden just a day longer, Phase 3 might have gone live unnoticed, and no one would have known what had been breached or why. By the end of the week, Diesel was awarded a Civilian Service Medal by the mayor herself. No speeches, no press, just a small room, quiet claps, a nod of gratitude. Brian stood behind him, one hand resting gently on Diesel's back, because that one bark, so easily dismissed, had unraveled an operation years in the making, one designed to pass beneath everyone's feet. Diesel had stopped it before it ever saw daylight. And as the city moved on, traffic resuming and life returning to its distracted rhythm, the Glendale K9 unit knew what most people didn't. The street had almost split open beneath them, and it was a dog who sealed it shut. And just like that, what looked like nothing turned into something no one saw coming. If that K9 hadn't barked, who knows what would have happened next. So if you love stories that keep you guessing, make sure to hit subscribe and like.